first thing I'll say is the Nightward is actually not set in the Caribbean. It's a secondary world fantasy. So that's okay. That's okay. I think it's because it's really The Witcher meets Caribbean mythology. So the thing I think everybody's familiar with about The Witcher is that it's very much based on Polish mythology and culture. And for me, the Nightward is sort of formulated like that. It's influenced by rather than set in. It's entirely a different world. And instead of populating it in a way that would make it very obvious it's medieval Europe, which is what epic fantasies tend to be sort of focused in that direction, I decided to go in a different direction where much of the elements did in fact come from Caribbean storytelling. And well, there's monsters and there's also technology. And the monsters are definitely tied to Caribbean mythology, and people from the West Indies will recognize these elements. Some people do not. That's understandable. I am very much a modern West Indian woman, which is to say, I've lived here my entire life and never lived anywhere else. And I don't think people realize how absolutely normal the region is compared to Europe and America. It's not actually a highly exoticized place in which we all have coconut trees in our front yard and go fishing for our dinner. We have more phone coverage than you guys do, more internet coverage as well. So it's a highly cosmopolitan place, and the elements of what it is I chose to bring in may not be what people expect. So that is one thing I think that might be a bit difficult for readers who are not grounded in some kind of previous knowledge that the Caribbean is not what this book is about. The book isn't about the Caribbean. But to go to the history of the book, yeah, it's a very long history, and the book plays with history. The book plays with memory. The book plays with what we think we understand about ourselves as humans and about our past. And the world building, I think when people go in, they're going to be shocked by a few things and be like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. I thought this was an epic fantasy. But what I tell people is it's a sci fantasy. And I really mean the sci part. It may not be immediately obvious, but I do really mean the sci part. And yeah, it might be a bit of a shock for some people how I choose to do the fantasy and the sci part together, because I think people are more used to a different approach, and I'm hoping my voice and what I have to say strikes a chord with them, because this is very much deep world building. There are elements there that borrow from all the cultures that have influenced this region. So people will see African influence, and you might see Asian influences, and you'll definitely see European influences, because the reality is that's what this part of the region draws a lot of its history and ancestral roots from. I was interested in presenting a matriarchal world that is not exactly like what people are used to seeing. In my corner of the world, women are the backbone of the working force. We are also the backbone of the family. And so I was interested in building out a world where women have magical power, where literally that allows them then to live freely without fear of being the weaker sex, if you will. And men also have power, but it's different. So they call the power that men have illusion, and they call the power that women have true magic, and that just means that their magic can actually change reality, and the magic of men can obscure reality, hide it for a time, but it's not permanent. And they're ruled in these 6 queendoms, all ruled by queens, and one queendom in particular called is ruled by the High Queen, who rules all of Guyland. And Guyland is so named because Guyland worships this goddess, whom they refer to as Gaia. And she is considered the goddess of all and goddess of all life. And the High Queen of Dun is considered to be her hand, the person who carries out her will on Guyland. And Gaia ascended 500 years ago, leaving the queens and the High Queen as her hand. But in this world, Gaia's spirit, which is what you need in order to rule, chooses who it goes to. It's not inherited. You don't get to be king or queen forever, and your issue isn't necessarily going to be the king and queen after you. But until the spirit ascends, which can only happen once the queen in question has passed, um, the children are raised as if, okay, you're the presumptive heir. And if you're not the presumptive heir, it's fine. There's councils you can go work on for the rest of your life. And you're supposed to participate in your community because the communities are run by councils and by democratic vote. And those councils present to the queens what they wish to happen, and what things they approve of. And when the book starts, the High Queen in question, Elise, is unusual in that she is for the first time trying to guide the councils to kind of deal with the situation that they have a sort of second-class citizen problem when it comes to men, And basically that's because in their history, there was what they call the Age of Chaos, which people are not allowed to talk about, and which they basically blame on whatever men did, And so they've been very carefully removing the reins of power for some time. And she is basically saying, as Gaia's hand, there are things that I know that you do not know. And I think it's really freaking important that we get ourselves right because we have bigger problems, And when you open the book, you're sort of like, okay, so what could she be referring to? And then all hell breaks loose. And suddenly she's not around anymore. And the spirit chooses, and it is her daughter, but her daughter is 10 years old. And so she has to run for her life from the technology that has been released in order to kill her mother and try to take over the throne. And with her, she has very little help. It's her bodyguard, basically, and one faithful Dahomey. And the Dahomey are basically built along the Dahomey warriors that you had in Africa, that their job used to be to protect the king. And I'm sure everybody's much more familiar with them now that we've seen Black Panther, and that particular futuristic idea of what they are, So in my book, they protect the queen, and they are warrior magicians. They are particularly powerful at wielding the powers that women have, and they are fighters. It's their job to take care of everyone royal. And when the book begins, for the first time, she's divesting some of that protection power to a cadre of men that basically ride cats and usually form the front line in whatever incursion they have. And they have to have this military setup because even though there are 6 kingdoms who live in harmony, there is one kingdom called Ragat who has never accepted Gaia's rule, and certainly not accepted the rule of any of the queens or the High Queen. Basically, they are the architect of the chaos that begins very early in the book. But they have their reasons for what they're doing, and the queen has her reasons for what they're doing. And basically, the book is a mystery as well as a deconstruction of the stories we tell ourselves and why we tell ourselves these stories.